Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Firefighters podcast, where we seek to develop, inspire, and motivate the world of the emergency services operator through a series of wide-ranging conversations. Now, before we go any further, just hit that rate, follow, or subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening to. It's a key performance indicator for us and helps us reach even more people. Now, here's what we've got for you today. Right, should we kick it off?
Absolutely.
Love it.
Be gentle. Be gentle.
Stephen Bartlett.
The name of the podcast, Be Gentle.
Be gentle. Well, I always call one of my favourite tags for the podcast is learning out loud. And what that's all about is being willing to fail, being willing to fumble through, and collectively we'll find ourselves in the right place. And isn't that, if anything, the biggest analogy, certainly from like yourself in an on-call perspective, isn't that the aspect of the fire service in itself? Because I certainly found this when I was in on-call, that you had so many wonderful skill sets on the truck. You know, you had men and women that worked in different organisations, different skill sets, different things like that. So when you get to an incident and you'd be like, it's HGV turned over, or it's a this, or it's a that, or it's this sort of chemical, or it's a factory or something like that, somebody there is going to have a better, and it hasn't got to be the person that's in charge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you know what I mean? It's pulling all of those skill sets together.
Tools in the toolbox.
Tools in the toolbox. And that applies as much up there as it does as what's on the truck. I think sometimes we can get locked into that idea of hierarchical command where I feel like I need to be the answer.
I need to answer this. I've got the problem. I need to, but actually looking over your right shoulder and saying, who have I got? What have I got? Right, I'm just going to say this out loud. Ideas go. And that.
Love that. And that again echoes back to that we were speaking about Martin Bromley before we came on, that confidence to respectfully be able to put your opinion forward and go, hey boss, I've seen this, I'm thinking this. And you either go, yep, love it, go for it, or you either go, yep, but actually I've also seen this on the far side, so just hold there for a minute.
But it's also having the confidence to say ideas go, because some people will perhaps get into that sort of decision trap where that I need to come up with the answer here. I'm not. I'm the boss. I'm the one in charge. I'm the one that should be answering this. Why should I be asking a firefighter? Why should I be asking for some advice? Is that going to make me look weak? If I don't know the answer, is that going to make me look like I don't
fear
have
of somebody going, well, don't you know, Steve?
Yeah, exactly that.
Oh my God, the boss doesn't even know what we're doing.
Yeah, the boss doesn't know. We're in trouble now. All of a sudden, the pencils go up the nose and the pants on their head and they're walking around. And it's just a case of saying, actually, do you know what? We are one team and it's tools in the toolbox. How are we going to resolve this issue?
Today's podcast was in partnership with our good friends Johnny and the team over at William Wood Watches. Now, if you're not familiar by now, William Wood was the name of his grandfather. He was a firefighter in the British Fire Service for over 25 years, stationed in Newcastle on the Blue Watch. Now, his grandson Johnny is a great friend of the podcast and came up with William Wood Watches to honour his grandfather and the legacy of firefighters all around the world. Now, some pretty cool updates from the William Wood Watch team. When it comes to their chivalrous collection, this August they came out with, honestly, one of my favourite looks for it. They came out with the gun metal for the face of the watch. Now, if you go over there and look at their watches, they've of course got the Jubilee, the Triumph, the Valium, the Bronze, but if you look at the chivalrous range, this is effectively the luxury dress range. It's got that sleek case, the luxury finish, and you can wear it on absolutely any occasion. I myself, I've said on the podcast before, I'm a massive fan personally of the Valiant collection. I've got the red watch, always with the red strap. Now, they do come with a selection of straps as well. And honestly, for me, the straps is probably one of the most favourite parts of it. It really is the one that catches everybody's eye. It's what draws you into it. And when you receive your William Wood watch, that whole unboxing experience is actually kind of special. Whether or not you get the fire alarm box or the VIP roll, usually comes, I think, with 3 different straps. However, I think it is if you get the Triumph collection, which is the Swiss precision watch made in Switzerland, you actually get that really unique fire alarm box as well that comes with it. Now that thing is absolutely stunning. You know the types you see in buildings where it says break glass on the front of it? That honestly has been made into this luxury leather bound box. You open that bad boy up, you see all the straps, you see the bottom compartment where you get the encasing watch. Pretty sure it comes with the cufflinks as well. And again, if you go over to their website, williamwoodwatches.com, you'll see that this company really does support firefighters all over the world. I think to date they are over £75,000 they have contributed to firefighter charities all over the world. So head on over and check it out. Have a look at the chivalrous first. They've got a chocolate range on there, but for me, the gunmetal one, if you're going to have a look at the gunmetal, that looks absolutely fantastic. The Triumph is probably my favourite, and I'm saving up for that one at the minute, but I have got the Valiant collection myself, and I absolutely love it. Johnny and the team are really making some moves with William Wood Watches, doing some great things for our sector. Now back to the show. And it's also succession planning and also making people feel acknowledged, because if you can feel like you're part of the idea, you can feel like you're part of the solution, which you are, then you're more engaged with seeing that executed and seeing that successful. Yeah. If you're part of the plan, it's your plan. Do you know what I mean? Right, Jane suggested this. I'm thinking ABC, so we're going to go with that. So Jane said this, and that, and I'm just approving it. I'm going to take responsibility for it.
100%.
But I don't have to be the right answer. I don't have to be in charge of the answer.
Non-operationally, back on station, back in, after the incidents are done and whatever else, actually working groups are so key in solving problems, because actually more heads make light work, and all. It's when you're looking at it and saying, well, actually, this is my idea. Who else has got an idea? You've got a whiteboard in the room here, and I'm looking and saying,
love it, mate. There's the game changers.
That's the best thing there, isn't it? Right, I'm just going to write a word up there, and it might not even be the word.
I forgot what's on there. So on there we've got CBRN, Ukraine, cybersecurity, AI, COVID lessons learned, electric vehicles. That was a mind dump.
Already, I'm thinking, I didn't revise any of those subjects. Please don't ask me.
He's about to ask me about the Manchester Arena bombing.
I've just walked into the wrong room. We're in trouble now. Right?
Did you ever see that on the? Was it like on the BBC or something? There was a gentleman.
Yes, I know exactly.
Went in.
It was a cleaner, I think.
He was or something, and he'd sat down, and you could see him getting progressively more nervous. And they said, and now we're going to speak to so I think they thought he was from South Africa. I think there might have even been a race spin in it, because the gentleman was black and they'd made an assumption.
I know exactly the clip.
Yeah, and he went, no. I love that.
I don't know the answer to that one. Yeah,
but finding yourself in those rooms, and again, it echoes back to our conversation about that operational capacity. When you're working in those working groups, you've actually got a very narrow lens, not you, Steve, but we've got a very narrow operational lens. When you've worked in a community or you've worked in somewhere for such a long time, non-operational staff, and I've had so much development from coaches, from people we have on the podcast, working with people in the NHS and the police and stuff like that, the different lens through which they see things. You spoke about some risk analysis and stuff, and we're going to get onto some of the stuff you do with the aviation in the UK. There's things like that where I would say to somebody, oh yeah, I've worked in the UK Fire and Rescue Service 14 years. And then they'd ask me that question. I'd be like, I haven't got a Scooby-Doo. But I thought you said you worked in the thingy bob, because I spoke to my friend Steve and he seems to know all about it. And he's worked in the fire service as well. Different ends of the same spectrum.
Absolutely.
Very different ends.
Absolutely.
Anyway, Stephen, welcome to the Firefighters podcast. How you doing, brother?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for having me up here.
Mate, I've wanted to get this conversation together, and we spoke before we came on about not being selfish, but trying to make time for yourself. Maybe that's going to be a nice place for us to start. And I know in your head you're going to think, dude, these weren't the questions you had written down. But I think it was such a poignant thing that you said. And I wonder what the correlation is between that and the idea of the emergency services operator. Yeah. Because you had to juggle 27 different balls to try and get ourselves together today.
Absolutely. I think one of my biggest sort of things is feeling guilty almost about making time for myself. So full-time occupation, part-time occupation, now a new business owner as well, father of 2 kids, football manager at the weekend, husband, not a part-time husband, trying to be a full-time husband. Well. There is a lot of plates to spin, and I am the first to admit, and those around me will back this up 100%. I don't always get it right.
I regularly drop one.
When I make time for different things, I really try and sort of give it my all, whilst trying to keep an eye on, right, what's the next task? Where do I need to be? And I always try to even out my time. And the one common denominator that sort of doesn't get the time, if you like, is myself. It's always work this, family that, whatever else.
Do you think that's more like specifically a UK thing? And I don't know that it is or it isn't, because we spoke a little bit about what we're here to talk about today. Not only is just the wonderful start of the new business, and it's something I really want to focus in on because it's been a real attraction for the podcast, but that aspect of like self-deprecating and this Western thing of, no, I don't talk about myself. No, I don't like making time for myself. No, I don't like, and I say it as a holistic view from the fire service as well. There's and even the emergency service as a whole. Although I think the military are better at it than we are. They tend to be, and some people will take the mickey out of them, beat the chest. Boom, 99.9% need not apply. Do you know what? That turns me on. I am that guy. And I wish we did more of that in the emergency services. But why do you think we're like that? I mean, from even yourself, why do you find it hard to make time for yourself?
I don't know. I almost feel guilty because of, some people join the emergency services, I guess, for lots of different reasons. It might be for a paycheck. It might be to make a difference. It might be to help or whatever else. I would definitely put myself in the bracket of, I joined the emergency services not only because of the family link, which I'm sure we'll talk about shortly, but it's that idea that you can help people, that it doesn't matter at what level, someone's having a bad day, they've picked up the phone and they've called the 3 numbers, and then help is going to arrive. And actually being part of that solution is is part of why I joined the emergency services, part of why I love it, why I've been doing it for so long. And I still get the buzz out of that now, knowing that
it's
you
quite
can
a
help
short
people.
link between taking action, seeing a result.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Do
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
we spoke about an incident you attended recently where, it was a road traffic collision. Someone's there, they're in a dangerous place or they're in a precarious position. You take an action, you implement a plan, and then it's resolved.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? Whereas with a lot of other things, and business is a wonderful example of it. I mean, the first time I sat down, crikey, pick any of the businesses, but we use the podcast as an example. First time we sit down and record the first ever episode, there's no one there.
You're
speaking into the void.
Is anybody listening?
There's no hello.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? And then you look at the counter, 1, 10, 20, and then you look at the biggest listened to podcast, 1 million a week. You're like,
that works.
I'm not, mate, we've failed. Whereas with this, before you get your foot, and now, we're inundated with people saying, oh, I use this to join the emergency services, blah, blah, blah. And that's all wonderful. But for so long, you're throwing energy into a machine. You're throwing sausage into the machine and not seeing any sausages coming out. Whereas the reward metric in the emergency services is very much that I do a thing, I make a difference, high five, we've seen the outcome. And it's very rewarding in that sense.
I think the sort of tier medals type thing where that's it, the job's done, back station tier medals, but the job doesn't finish there, does it? So as you well know, you take stuff home, you think about it, you analyse. I'm probably one of the world's worst overthinkers. Driving up, as I said about driving up here today, it's like, what am I doing? What am I doing? But actually, I'm doing something really cool. I'm putting myself outside my comfort zone. I'm taking on a new challenge.
I think this mirrors very much what you already do, but you don't know you do. So what I mean by that is, and I'll give you an example. So you've been on call for how many years?
23 years.
23 years. Obviously, you exist whole time in aviation as well. You've done that for a very long time, and I know your family 101.
Just over 100 years. Yeah,
that's incredible.
Yeah.
So let's just pause on that one for a second.
Yeah.
Over 100 years, your family has served UK Fire and Rescue Service
at the same station. In the same little village.
That's pretty incredible.
Between four family members.
So as I zoom in on that as a mirror of the conversation we're having today, we spoke before about the art of communication. We spoke about how this is diminishing, and we spoke about, firefighters going to community events, they huddle around, face in with, hey guys, talk about a job last week, talk about this, talk about your missus, talk about your fella, whatever it might be.
Yep.
Turn and face, because you know the difference. Having had such a long, family, the difference between that one person. I remember you shared with me a picture of your family when your brothers were younger and you're at a fire station, that sort of stuff. That aspect of the difference you make to somebody largely will be invisible to you.
Yeah.
When you turn and speak to a kid at a fete, or a little girl writes a letter into the fire station and you write her back, or you ring the parents and you go, hey, is Jesse there? Let's just speak about this. And I see the same with the podcast.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? For so many people, just joining the UK Fire and Rescue Service, or they've felt disenchanted with what they've been doing, perhaps for a couple of years, maybe they've been in it for 20 years, 15 years, whatever it may be, reminding themselves of that passion. And everybody will connect with something different. You'll scroll through the episodes and you'll go, good, rubbish, not interested, oh my God, wow. And there'll be that one. And yours will be that one for many people. It might be people joining your local service. It might be people starting on call in Scotland or wherever or somewhere across the world, and going, wow, I've always wanted to learn more about the aviation, and we're going to speak about it today. So, I know that was a long explanation, but when you're driving down here today and thinking, who the frickin' hell am I?
Yeah.
It's the unknown unknowns, because you already know all about your life.
Yeah, that's true.
You've lived it, so it's not a surprise to you.
And it'd be it makes people smile. I don't really like to sort of divulge too much. So this is me massively going outside my comfort zone, right? Which
ironically you would encourage your children to do.
Absolutely, it is absolutely. I encourage my children to do. So,
Yeah.
but there's also an element of, I recognise that you need to tell people about something to make a difference. Now, I come back to a story. Believe it or not, I ran the London Marathon a few years ago. Now that will make a few people smile. So I don't like running.
Always been on my list.
I
Such a
do
cow
not
to run.
like running, and I ran
Socks.
it. I ran it for one reason only, and that was to raise money for cancer research. And very personal reason for that. But I realised that I needed to tell people, and I needed to keep telling people. So therefore, you get the tagline of, "Oh, did you run the London Marathon?" Because you've told the story so many times. But as an end result, the figure that I ended up raising for the charity was huge. And you just go, £10,000 has gone into that charity pot because I told my story.
Massive.
Now I told
That
my
is
story,
incredible.
and like I say, people now rib, and it makes me smile because you go, yes, I did, yes, you're right. And I don't like running, and I really don't like running.
Mate, running is so hard, and I say when I'm at my heaviest, I was like 24 stone, and even now coming down to, I think I'm about 18 stone now, it's just so hard, and it's a totally different mental discipline, but it's being able to apply yourself to something like that, I find it incredibly admirable.
But the reason I bring that up is that I needed to tell people a story so the charity could benefit.
Yeah.
Now, I just kept telling that story.
Gotta put yourself out there.
I just kept telling that story.
Yeah.
So today, I guess I'm telling the story. We've spoken before, and there's an interest there where you've said, actually, do you know what? I'd like to talk about this, and this, and let's have the podcast. And
I just think your story is so incredibly authentic, and it's similar to a lot of the partnerships that we do on the podcast. Because I always say to people, if Coca-Cola rang up tomorrow and said, I want to partner with a podcast, I'd be like, nah, it's not really, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And it'd actually be really disrespectful, I think, to the listeners, because you're nothing to do with it. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
I would see straight through it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we'll go straight down a rabbit hole, which is always what I tend to do. Just give us a quick rewind.
Okay.
What you do in the emergency services, current rank, a little bit about the on-call, a little bit about the aviation.
Okay, so I am 23 years serving, on-call fire crew manager now. I have lived in the village my whole life. I've grown up on the fire station with my father was on-call firefighter at the same station. So although 23 years serving, 44 years at that fire station in the village. And lots of stories to tell along the way. Fast forward a few years into aviation, 22 years now in aviation, UK aviation as well. I've worked at 2 different airports in the UK, and currently a serving station manager.
That's wicked. We've had a couple of aviation people on the podcast before, but we kind of spoke about nothing to do with aviation, in all honesty with you. And I find that aspect of it so fascinating. And I think I'd probably love to go there first, because it's not part of the same disciplines and stuff like that, sort of. But to the general public, they will look at that and go, firefighters fighting fire. I mean, if an aeroplane crashed in the middle of the city, public service or firefighters would attend it.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
when you're specifically trained for that, what when would you want to get into the aviation side of things?
Again, my father served as an aviation firefighter, retiring as a chief fire officer, and it's just looking to say that's something I've always been in and around. The aviation, a vacancy came up at a UK airport, and I applied, and I was fortunate enough to get through. And it was just one of those that it was a step on the ladder. It was like, right, I'm full-time firefighter. I'd already been in the on-call system for a year, 18 months. And it's like, now I'm a full-time firefighter. This is great. And
what was the application process for it?
It's very similar to the local authority.
I think
fire
the fitness
service
test was harder.
So 9 at the time, 9.6 on a bleep test is what
That's
I
a
needed
lot
to
higher.
do. Yeah, and that is changing.
We
now
had to
as
do
well.
press ups and sit ups and everything as well, though, because I went and did one of the ones at one nearby to me. So I did it, the East Midlands one, and we did like a weird myriad of. It was like a sports hall.
Yeah.
It was press ups, sit ups, shuttle runs. It was weird.
No,
I think they tried to bring a military aspect into it, because I think they have a 40 press ups in a minute rule or something. I can't remember.
Yeah, no, the bleep test was the big sort of game changer, I guess, and the rest of it was weights and various other tests that through it, and then you've got the written testing, and then you've got the interview and all the sort of various elements. The process takes a little while. It's not a quick process by any means, but it gave me a foot in the ladder. It gave me I'm now a full-time firefighter. Did I really know the difference between aviation and local authority at the time? No, I'll be honest, I didn't. It was like, I'm in the fire service now, and the trucks are very different. The environment's very different. The way in which we fight fires, to a degree, is very different. Yeah. And it's just a very exciting time.
Yeah.
My first station, the first watch, the first group of people, I'm still very much in touch with. Met up with one of my past colleagues a couple of weeks ago with the kids for a walk along the beach and just sort of chewing the fat of over the years.
That's great. I'm terrible
That's what
at that.
you do.
I meet so many, and this is not an excuse, even though I'm going to make those excuses. I meet so many goddamn people that I always want to stay in contact with people.
Yeah.
But unless you make it a priority, I mean, like you said yourself about being selfish, you're trying to cut out an evening of your time. Say, I'm going to go and catch up with Dave. I'm going to catch up with Steve.
I'm terrible at it. I really am terrible at it. But unfortunately, I'd heard some news and I wanted to go and catch up. And it was a real reason to, as I said, making time for myself. As a family, we went and met them.
That's huge.
We got the dog out and we went for a walk, and me and my colleague had a bit of a chat, and we sort of had a catch up, and put the world to rights for an hour, and it was really, really good. It was really needed, and it just made you realise that actually, these are people that I was growing up with 20 years ago. This is really good.
They're the test
really
of a true friendships as well, when you can go a couple of years,
see
them, and it's
100%.
like you just saw them yesterday.
100%.
You know what I mean?
Definitely.
So growing up around that environment of seeing, because I think I did on-call for 10 years. I think there's an important aspect that I want us to really sort of try and unfold about the real difference between the expectations, the sort of unwritten rules, and being an on-call firefighter, being somebody in your community, especially with yourself, where you've got your brothers, your dad and your granddad have all served in that community.
Yeah.
What did you think it was when you were a kid? Because you've got pictures of you when you were a very small child.
Yeah, that's right. Well, not my granddad, it was my uncle. So my dad, my brother, my uncle, the four of us all serving. Growing up, you're looking at these guys that were serving their communities, out there helping, making a difference, doing some really good work. Things were very different at the time to now, where you're looking about perhaps procedures are very different, very changed. But growing up, it was just looked like a fun environment. I know it's not fun, and I know there's
no, it is, but it is. It's like Cub Scouts.
From the outside looking in, it
10.
just looks like we've got the best toys, we've got the trucks with the blue lights, we've got everybody likes to talk to a firefighter of an open day or a village collection. Everybody wants to come up. The kids want to come, whatever it is. And I'm sure they do the same for other emergency services as well. But I think fire is absolutely out there. So growing up as a child, looking at these guys, thinking,
I don't think they do the same. Not because they don't want to.
Yeah, maybe
I think they do want to, but I don't think they have the capacity sometimes.
Yeah.
And in all honesty, I just don't think they have the same USP.
Yeah.
People love paramedics, but they don't have as many Gucci tools.
Yeah.
If you've looked in a police car, there's a couple of cones and about that. They're incredibly multi-skilled operators, but some people have some horrible connotations when they think about the police, and some of them are hated. I would say to people, the vast majority of times we turn up, people are glad to see you. They want to see you. You're there to fix problems.
So I got to the age of 21 before I joined. My brother joined at 18.
Before you joined the on-call?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, so it's, at 18 you could go through the door. My brother went through at 18. And I waited until I was 21. Various reasons, wasn't right time for me perhaps, whatever was going on. Went through. And haven't looked back from that point since. So,
what's the process for joining an on-call station back then?
Back then, the interview was very informal.
Yeah,
the application was just the case of do
you want to do it?
Do you want to do it?
Yeah,
you up for it?
Yeah.
You're physically fit enough. Yeah, okay. And then you obviously the medical standards and whatnot I had to go through as well. It's very, very different now.
Mm-hmm.
I won't go into the detail of my interview, but it was just a very informal interview. Bearing in mind my brother and my father. My father had retired at that point, but my brher was still serving.
Did they ever ask you the question of turning up to dead bodies and stuff like that? Because I always think that's a weird one.
No, no, not at all. And I don't think there's any point, any part of the interview process or even the early days that prepares you for that. I think it would be wrong to say, this will sound wrong, so perhaps I won't be able to put it in the right words. So, but when you're a new starter, it's almost the case of like the fatality is you want to protect and you want to educate at the same time. So how do you do that? So if you know it's the first time, you want to be really protective of the firefighter, and you want to make sure that it's not, you're dealing with it delicately. I think in years gone by, certainly on other areas, other stations, perhaps other counties, other brigades, the idea of sort of blooding someone in on a this is a dead one is just horrendous, absolutely horrendous. It's everybody. It's not something I enjoy. It's something I would rather do than have somebody else do.
That's the thing.
But I don't enjoy it. I don't like it. And actually, growing up in the village, growing up serving the station, going to fatalities.
People that you know.
On all of the roads that lead into and out of where I live, I can tell you, as I'm sure you'll be able to be able to justify as well, is
you
those
can point at trees.
Those
and
stories stay with you.
Go,
those images stay there, and actually, all of the roads that lead in and out of my hometown, I've been to incidents which are horrific, and those images are still very much burnt in there. But,
I think there's a trauma aspect when I do a lot of stuff with
trim practitioner and all that sort of stuff, and I do that service with my service. I think it's almost harder for an on-call firefighter in respect that when you are going to the same location all of the time and you know the community and you know all the roads in and out of it, I think there's a lesser ability to fully detach from it. Because also then, I mean, you used to work as a butcher before you joined it. When I was working in other companies when I was on call, you would go to a traumatic incident, potentially traumatic, and then you would go to work and somebody would ask. They'd go, Pete, we know you're on a call because the boss said, they said, oh, Pete's on a call, so he's going to be in when he's in. Were you on that job on there?
Yeah.
Because it's on the news, it's on the radio, the traffic was built up when they were on the way into work or whatever, or it's a local, someone's just hung themselves or something like that, and they'll say, oh, was it so-and-so? And you don't want to be that MI5, can't talk about it, but you also, you don't want to share personal information, but sometimes I wonder what the real effect is, and I know it's so intangible and it's so personal, to know what the impact on the individual is for you to be asked to constantly regurgitate that information and constantly run that record in your head.
Yeah, I think one of your previous podcasts I was listening to, in fact, some I've just finished off listening to on the way up, we're talking about do you share information or details from incidents you've been to with loved ones, or do you you ask people to relive an incident if you're going through the sort of early days of trim, and you sort of tell me about this, and you're asking them to regurgitate the whole incident. Actually, do you know what? Sometimes you just need to let that one sleep and not actually talk about it. And there might be a detail to say, yeah, do you know what? We were there and it wasn't very pleasant, and we did the best we could, and whatever else, and hoping for a better outcome. But yeah, absolutely. It's not always an easy thing to do. But.
A quick reminder for all of our listeners of our monthly giveaway. Now, as part of our partnership with Hikes, Rosenbauer and Tallyman, we give away that little bit extra to our podcast listeners every single month. You can get 2 personalized BA tallies. These are hardware and they've got your own name on them, they've got your own service number on them, and they have the podcast logo on the back. And then for the juicy stuff, Hikes give away a pair of their incredible footwear. And some of the stuff is pretty expensive stuff, to be honest with you. We try and switch it and change it every month. We are guided by the gods of Hikes to make sure we are giving you exactly what you need for that time of year. So it might be boots, it might be trainers, and then once every quarter our good friends over at Rosenbauer are giving away their Boros B5 firefighting boots as well. So to be in with a chance to win, jump over to our social media platforms or YouTube, where you need to tag a member of the emergency services in the post, be following our page, and you will be in with a chance to win at the end of every single month. Back to the show.
I want to just final bit on that is just about this aspect of empathy exhaustion, because the more people I speak to, the more fascinating I'm trying to find it, because hopefully it makes me feel less like a cold-hearted guy. But when your missus or your fella has just had not just as a different job, maybe they are an admin assistant, or maybe they're a secretary, or maybe he works on a building site and he just fills skips all day long, and you've been to something that's different, no better or worse, but it's just different, and they tried to talk to you about,
100%.
I had to stand filling this skip in the rain today, and then my freaking shovel broke, or whatever, or the boss called me in 20 minutes earlier before my dinner finished, and I had to stack aisle 3 or whatever. And stopping yourself, making yourself be interested, because you are interested, but you're operating on again, no better or worse, but you're operating on a different level.
Different wavelength, yeah.
How have you walked that balance, in the 30 so years or whatever, 20 something years that you've done now?
I don't know, and again, I would very much say it's not something I get right at all. When you try to disengage from what we're doing to a certain degree, once you've done it, you've done it. When you're there, you're there. And yes, you do relive stuff in your own time. You try not to relive it too much with friends and family, and certainly not details. And you try not to let incidents impact your home life as well. And there are times when been on call, family birthdays or whatnot, and you break, you go and deal with something which is horrific, absolutely horrific, and then you come back and then you're like, right, sorry, happy birthday, let's happy birthday. And it's just like, how
Daddy, I need my t-shirt, I'm going to school now.
How do you flip
give me
from
a second,
one
babe.
to the other? And it's and then when you get your quiet moment and you sit down and you sort of reflect and go, do you know what, that was actually pretty it's almost an out of body type stuff where you go, right, when the bleeper goes, I need to do this person, but when I'm back home, I need to be this person. And it's really difficult, and it's, again, not something I get right.
I think a way that I've managed, I don't know if I've fully managed anything, but the way that I've found it really useful is I find it incredibly humbling. when you, and I morbidly feel very grateful for lots of things, but I feel very grateful, for, like you said, you don't want people to have these tragic accidents, but I feel very grateful for being the person that gets to go and try and make it less a greater effect. And I also feel grateful for going to some really tragic incidents and some real places where people are living in socially deprived areas, different socioeconomic level, because it makes you incredibly grateful. I think we can get into a really weird thing where if you're never exposed to really
you live in your
nasty
little
stuff,
bubble, don't you?
You live in your bubble.
Live in a bubble, that's fine. I think that, absolutely. And I think when you're, if you're not exposed, it sounds really interesting. People are inquisitive. They ask questions, of course, and I can understand why. And it's, sometimes I might ask questions of a different colleague doing a different role, and you sort of, it's very mundane for them or very normal, and you go, oh yeah, but tell me about this. That sounds really interesting. And they go, really?
Yeah.
It's just an audit of this, and this. How is that interesting? Because it's different. It's not what I do. It's not what Matt. So
100%,
instead of
mate.
filling the skip and looking at the firefighter running down the road, he, she, whatever they're going to be doing, whatever they're going to, it's exciting. So I can understand why people ask the questions. But equally, I think my wife certainly now has the way in which she poses the question. Perhaps she doesn't. Whereas before she'd quite quickly ask a question. How was this? What was that?
Yeah.
Now it's a little bit more time before she would ask the question. And she knows again when I will and won't share about. Never getting into the personal details of stuff, because it's just, I'd rather you don't have that mental image in your head. It's bad enough that I've got the actual image in my head. And the colleagues that you sit with and you talk, you debrief afterwards, or might be some time afterwards when you sit and talk, or it might be over a beer on a social, and you're just always checking in on people. I think that's the key bit there, is just always checking in on people.
Yeah. And I think it really gives you, I have quite a close relationship with death, for want of a better description. Not like I've seen lots of death, but what I mean by that is the realization that we're not here forever. We spoke about it before we came on, and I think it's really important as well. And I think it sometimes when I'm around my children and things that we've been to in the past, and I try as often as possible. You might not be here tomorrow.
Yeah, 100%.
Because even like I spoke to a gentleman a long time ago. It's the fact that this person might not be there tomorrow because it's called sudden adult death syndrome, and there's similar for children as well. Where they just can't, they don't know why the person's passed, but the person just passes away. And I try and think about things like that as often as possible, because it makes me realise that my children might not be there tomorrow. So I really do need to focus in on this time now. We are here for a short whisper of a blink of a flash of time in the grand scheme of things. We are but a blip on I remember seeing a meme where it was like a picture of the universe, and then it's got a tiny little dot on it, and it says, "This is you crying in the shower about the argument you had this morning." And this is the universe. Do you know what I mean? It gives you a different comprehension of what reality really is in comparison to what we're struggling with, what we think we're struggling with.
Yeah, I get that.
I wanted to ask you, before we get into the other bits, just about that basic training thing. So what was basic training like when you first joined?
So basic training for the on-call. So two different elements we'll deal with.
Because I think aviation, again, is a whole different kettle of fish.
So the on-call, let's say I'd done a year, 18 months in the on-call process before aviation. So the on-call element was, there's a certain amount of pre-course training on station where you'd come down on drill nights and you'd be doing some various bits and bobs, learning knots and lines or whatever it would be, running out hose, whatever, just learning some real basics. And then you go to the weekend training courses.
Did you already know some of that? How early on were you doing knots and lines in the house?
No, do you know what? I didn't. I was never a Boy Scout. I was never allowed in the Scouts.
My old man ran a scout club.
No,
so I was big in knots and lines.
I was not into it at all. Unfortunately, not at all. Although I grew up very comfortable around fire engines and whatever else, I knew nothing about them.
Yeah.
So I turn up down at headquarters, and we're going through the basic training, and you're the drill. The subby in charge of the drills is shouting numbers, and you're doing this, and then you got your hose, and you got a day of running hose out, and I really enjoyed it because at the time I was 21 years old. I was physically fit. I was enjoying life. I was just having fun. And when I joined, there were four of us that joined together. So four of us went down on the same course on the same station, and actually, one of those guys is very much in my inner circle, if you like, of friendships. And the other Yeah, the other guys still you'll see about, but we just had real good fun. We're in the car, we're going down, we're training, blah blah blah. You get back onto station, and you might pass an assessment, you might fail, you might need to retake, whatever it was.
Yeah.
But it was really good fun. The aviation, 18 months later, is a residential course. You go away, you're in your residential accommodation. You're going through.
What was that? Is it 12 or 16 week, or is it 3?
No, it was 5 weeks. Might have been 6 weeks.
Wow.
And you learn the basics of aviation firefighting. So they cover off the hose, the ladders and whatnot, and then you get into the how to.
What are some of the big differences? Sorry to keep interrupting, but things like
that's fine.
hose and things
that's
like
exactly
that.
the same. So I mean, Dutch roll aviation is something I learned 22 years ago, and actually now in more recent years, local authority we're incorporating Dutch roll hose into it. So it's obviously you bowl it out rather than running it out as a conventional hose. You've got both the male and female couplings, and you roll it out, and then you can connect your branch, and then you can off you go. So it's a much.
Are they all still male, female instantaneous? As they are?
Yeah. So it's exactly the same hose. You take it off.
So on some of the American airbases, they have stores couplings.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So
do you have that on anything?
No, the only elements of that would be on our CAF system, which is on our domestic appliance at the airport. But so the hose running is exactly the same. The ladders are exactly the same. You're learning how to tackle pressurised fire, and at the time it was pressurised fuel fire as well. So you would absolutely get know if you got it wrong, because it was going to come back and bite you.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's gas, it's much cleaner, it's safer and whatnot, but it doesn't give you that same element of. It still gives you a very realistic training environment. That's the main thing, but it's just not quite the same as the pressurised fuel fire.
So what was the worst case scenario style training that you were doing there? Because having trained on a few fuselage style stuff, and I am so beyond novice in what we're discussing right now, so please forgive me fumbling through this conversation.
That's fine.
Is we did a combination of different variations of coning down and CAFs and stuff, but obviously everything we did was on the ground, but the vast majority of yours, you work on a station, much like many of the stations, which they have a series of Panther-like style vehicles similar to Rosenbauer. So I don't know how much of it is.
But again, when I started, Pete, it was a case of we would be jumping out the cab and we'd be running at the fire. So we'd bowling out hoses.
Did they not have the cannons back then? The big.
Yeah, they did, but it was almost the hoses were your first line of attack type thing, and then the roof monitors. Now they're very much cab controlled, where joystick controlled. Back then, it was you actually were on the roof holding the monitor, pointing the direction, and it was
nice.
It was great fun, of course, but it's a lot safer now, where you're actually in the cab. You're
significantly more exposed.
Absolutely.
If the entire thing goes pop.
Absolutely. So, so you're learning how to single and two double line attack on an engine fire or a fuselage fire, undercarriage, whatnot. You're learning how to work together, which is great.
What does that look like? Just break that down real for the person that's never seen it. So what would that look like?
You predominantly have one line would be protecting the fuselage, pushing the fire away, and the other line would be attacking the fire. So you'd have one that would be sort of sweeping and trying to keep the fuselage safe, and one that was really aggressively going after putting that fire out.
So they're both on 52 or 45 mil.
45 mil, 70 into 45, and then if you're going to be running out a foam blanket, which would be a 10x branch, a type of branch to lay a foam blanket, then you'd have a 70 mil hose into that, so you can lay a real decent foam blanket over everything, because that's the main difference. It's not just flat water; it's a mix foam.
So
mix.
Would both of those individuals be attacking with water, or would one be foam, one would
both be with foam. So once the foam's engaged, that's it. You're attacking with that. So initially the water comes through, and then
so it's just to try and lay a blanket across the entire thing and suffocate it down. Do you always attack from the front?
No, it depends on wind direction. Depends on what's going on. Obviously, the engines are running. It's dangerous front and back, but clearly you want the engines shut down.
How close can you get to one of them before they suck you in? I mean, I'm sure it's not like the films where you wander past. And
I don't want to know. I don't want to be that close.
So close.
It's a listen. You're speaking to the flight deck, and you're getting engine shut down before you go to it. But clearly, a very hazardous environment to be in. So you have to be thinking about what you're doing.
They can't do that remote. I know there may be aspects of this even you're unsure, but they can't do that remotely. So that does rely on the pilot being able to manually shut everything down.
Yeah.
If the pilot's capable of doing so.
Yeah.
Well, if the pilot's not capable of doing so.
So you can get on board the aircraft to be looking at different accesses onto the aircraft.
Stupid question: is that a ladder, or
It would
because
have
those
been-
things that you slide down, I bet they're not like something out of Total Wipeout trying to climb up them frickin' things.
Absolutely, and I know a few colleagues. Never done it myself, but I know a few colleagues that have
Tried
done
to
it,
run
where
up them.
They've gone and been successful because
Really?
obviously they're detached.
Fair play to
They're
them.
detached from the galley. So
Yeah.
going up the slide is
Because
not
they're quite high. What is it? 20 feet up?
well, depending on the aircraft type, but yeah, it
Yeah.
would be aircraft
I'd love to
types,
do that.
Heights change differently. So obviously attacking the fires are very different to local authority. The way in which we do it is slightly different. So
Yeah. So predominantly, when we're talking about foam, is it CAF systems? Are they the fluoroproteins? Because foam's gone through a lot of changes in the last 15 years.
yeah, CAFs is mainly domestic. It would be on our domestic appliance. The foam on the airfield is very different. So it's a talk about types and manufacturers. I suppose we'll keep away from that one, but it is a 3% induction foam system that we use, and so you've got the Panther you spoke about a second ago, a 12,500 litre tank of water plus a 1,500 litre tank of foam. And then there'll be a 3% mix. So effectively you get 4 tanks of water to 1 tank of foam. So you've got a good induction system going through.
So there's quite a heavy amount of delivery. You can
Yeah, absolutely.
Do that.
Yeah.
How? What's the theoretical attack that you should be able? So, for example, in domestic, pretty much think it's everywhere in the UK. They say we will get to an incident within 10 minutes. I think there's some sort of legal obligation on that.
Slightly different on the airfield. Yeah, sort
What's
of
what's
two and
the
a half
realistic?
minutes, not exceeding 3 in optimum conditions. So
that it?
daylight,
Wow.
dry conditions, you're looking at anywhere the aircraft can taxi sort of prior to or immediately after landing.
Because speaking to the Rosenbauer folks, they were saying that the vehicles that are taken on by aviation are slightly different. I don't think they're even road legal.
Well, we do off
Because
base response. There is
they're either a bit too heavy or they move a bit too quick or something like this. But they've been given special exemptions because they're
Yeah.
not used on commercial roads.
Yeah, if we ever take one of the appliances, certainly in our location, if we ever take the appliances out, then we need to be informing the sort of the police that we're
Really?
doing, and there's a bit around.
It's a big sexy thing to see on the road.
Yeah,
though,
I was
isn't
going
it?
to say they are very, very big, and they're very. You saw one coming towards you. That'll be. But we do train. We do off-base incidents, training scenarios. We have an off-base commitment as well. So either end of the operational runway, there'll be a certain distance, and that we will send everybody to, and a further distance we'll send. But that's the location I work in, and obviously airports up and down the country.
So, as people might be unfamiliar, is you and a lot of I think pretty much all airports, the fire service on there cover all of the EMS style stuff. They cover all the medical as well. So you do have a domestic tender, very similar, if not identical-ish, I imagine, to some of the stuff people will see on the road.
Very, very similar to what you'd see out in the local authority. Yeah, absolutely. So the truck that I ride in my on-call system, we have battery-operated hydraulic equipment. Well, we have battery-operated hydraulic equipment at the airport as well. So it's very different. So it's not very different in that respect. With regard to medical response, again, the on-call bit we haven't touched on is a co-responder role as well. The single person co-responder from the local authority on-call station. So for the last sort of 15, 16 years, going out as a single responder to medical.
Do all
incidents.
firefighters do that?
No, and not all fire services do that either. So
No, we don't.
Certainly,
I wish we did.
Certainly, some fire services are now mobilising red trucks to ambulance calls as well. And I know there's a big debate
It's
about
a whole
this.
union thing, isn't
without
it?
without getting into it, it's but
I would
we
love to
currently
see us do more of it. I think for the vast majority, and again, I speak out of my own bias, the vast majority of frontline responders want to help. They want to be there to make a difference.
Well,
if it were your dad or your mum or
absolutely.
your kids, and this was the closest vehicle with a medical capability, we've got
Coming back to the,
defibs and stuff.
Absolutely, coming back to the why did you join the fire service? So, save life to to make a difference, to help somebody on their bad day. All of the above. Now that might be a fire, it might be a medical event, it might be whatever else. If you're able to make
Plus,
an
if you go to an
attendance,
RTC and you're the first one there, you're going to do it anyway.
yeah,
You're going to be
and
doing it.
I guess there's the sort of the safety in numbers element, and I get that, and I do understand that, and totally respect people's decisions for that as well. But there's also the
Yeah, but that's no different to what the paramedics are already doing. You know what I mean? They go out in their cars, responding individually.
So going out to medical calls. So IEC, the immediate emergency care training that we undertake is basic life support plus a bit. And
it's good.
It's really good.
So you guys cover that, guys and girls cover that inside How far does your jurisdiction, for want of a better term?
The domestic, the aviation bit is clearly inside the fence. The domestic will do anything inside the fence and a little bit outside as well. But we certainly don't go into neighbouring county where they would be going. We would back them up 100%, but that's not the primary role.
Now, we've been trained at a couple of airports with my local service a few times, and I did want to ask you about this idea of airside, non-airside, why it's so difficult to get airside, even though we're in emergency services and all that sort of stuff. I get heavily regulated. How does that structure work? Who's in charge at most airports, and where does the hierarchy sit on a standard airport in the UK?
Well, certainly, Aviation UK would be looking at airside, landside locations, and that would be based on security clearances. That would be based on need. Where do you need? Now, clearly, the emergency services need to be able to get to anywhere, landside or airside, to deal with an emergency. So the passes that general aviation will have UK-wise will enable that to happen. But it's about the security clearances that people are given to undertake those roles. Local authority, we're not saying that we don't trust local authority, but they haven't been through that. There might be a DBS type stuff, but it's not exactly that. It's not. So coming in to deal with an emergency is very different to coming in for a familiarisation visit. Emergency is primary.
Do you have to go through more DBS style security clearance
absolutely.
to work on an airport then?
Yep.
Is there like red flags, like if you've got a criminal record in
I wouldn't want to get into the details of it, but and I get that. Probably not one for now, Pete.
When we talk about the levels of aviation and stuff like that, as in personnel, as in freight, as in different levels in different airports and stuff like that, so what are those sorts of levels?
Airports are categorised based on the size of the aircraft and what they're operating. So you'll have a low-cat aircraft airfield, which might be general aviation, might be the puddle jumpers, the sort of weekend flyers, that type of stuff. But you'll also then have the cargo terminals, which will be classified slightly differently. And then going into the normal sort of, or the higher end, the Cat 6 up to Cat 10, and that will depend on the types of aircraft that are flying. So it might be a 737, an A319, a smaller EasyJet aircraft, or it might be a large Emirates A380. So it depends on the size, the length and the width of the fuselage will depend on the Cat
10 being the biggest, the best. What sort of passenger load is that sort of thing carrying? Is something that is operating at a level 10 airport?
So the passengers on board each aircraft will vary depending on how the aircraft is configured. So some will configure to get the maximum amount of passengers in, and some will configure for a little bit more luxury perhaps, and give their passengers a little bit more space. So it's difficult to say that they will carry 200, 300, 400, 500, but every aircraft or every airline configures slightly differently.
What's the biggest that they can, do you know?
I can't remember.
What's an Airbus? What can an Airbus hold?
An Airbus A380, again, it depends how it's configured, but you'd be looking at sort of 300-400 people.
Really?
Plus,
That's a lot.
A lot of people.
Does the turnout differ, whether it's cargo or souls on board? As in, what's the standard turnout, as in from both the aviation side and then supplemented by...
so the classifications of calls, I guess, aircraft accident, imminent, full emergency will always attract the attendance of local authority. And then based on where the airport is and the local authority agreements and the sort of the planning groups that meet and get together, the strategic level decision makers will determine what level type of call responses they're coming into. Mm-hmm. And the lower end of the calls will be just dealt with in-house. So we don't call the local authority in to support.
What would a lower end call be? Like,
might be a fuel spill, might be an aircraft that's been bumped by a set of steps, for example. So you want to go out and have a look. You want to make sure it's safe. You want to make sure
it's already grounded.
But it's already grounded, absolutely. If there's an aircraft coming in with an emergency, then generally it will be classified according to the problem. There might be a.
Is it always? Oh, so it doesn't always go to level 10, like...
No, it's not always a full emergency, it's not always a local standby, it's not always a aircraft accident imminent. It will depend on the nature of the...
Aircraft accident imminent.
Yeah.
God, that sounds like an intimidating term to hear. We're lucky enough that we've not seen, to my incredibly limited knowledge, not seen too many big aviation accidents in the...
No, there have been a few, and that's, aviation...
They tend not to happen at airports.
Well, aviation is a very incredibly safe...
safest way to travel.
Safest way to travel. But when you look, there are UK incidents, and without getting too much into the detail of all of those, there are UK incidents. There was a big British Airways incident a number of years back that was dealt with in London, and actually, thankfully, minimal injuries compared to the type of incident it was.
I think it's a lot of private flights that tend to go down. I'm not saying they're not doing their jobs right, but most of smaller recreational style.
I've been to more aircraft accidents in my local authority.
Really?
Than I have in my aviation.
Yeah, I remember reading.
Obviously, very different level of the general aviation. There might be maybe 10 souls on board, and in aviation at the airport there might be a couple of hundred souls on board. So it's very different response in that regard. But I have been to more aircraft accidents local authority than
I have. Small light aircraft, helicopters.
Yeah.
You know, more people got private helicopters than you think have these days. And I'm not sure what the air clearance and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I was just looking in the back garden, Pete, to see whether you got landing space out there.
Oh well, yeah. When one day maybe when we get, you know what, mate? I went to somebody's house a long time ago, and they were talking about it as we were leaving. This was a beautiful house. He had a menagerie at the bottom of his garden with like goats and pigs and chickens and all this sort of stuff. And they had it fenced off. And then in the front bit, he had two massive sunken trampolines. And then he had his house. Lovely home. Really, really lovely home. And as we were leaving, I don't know why we were talking about aviation. And he was saying that his son was having lessons. And I said, oh God, how much is a lesson these days? And he said, well, obviously I'd take him up for free. And I was like, oh, where do you keep it? Press the button. Double garage opens, and it was on a bed. It was on the whole thing came out, and that's when you just go, oh right, you're that rich. Sorry, right. Obviously,
I haven't got one
of course. No, I haven't got one of those. I've got a drone. Is that the same working class? Drones are worth it. Maybe I want to see about drones. How does that work these days? Have you seen much strategic? Was there much conversation in it? There must have been maybe when they first started becoming a problem, because you can get a drone recreationally now. How does that work?
The licensing and the flying of drones is much more regulated now than it
needs to be,
because
they're big enough, aren't they?
Absolutely. And again,
something.
In the UK, you can see the reports that drones have been spotted and whatnot. So that's something that absolutely airports are very much.
What's the mechanism for an airport getting rid? I know it's probably a question for their security, but it's like, I'd like to think they just shoot the bloody thing, but I bet they're not allowed to. But if you had to stop a flight coming in because of freaking drones there, thousands and thousands and tens of thousands immediately to redirect that, my God. That's a question for another time.
Absolutely.
So, typical day of an aviation firefighter. I know there's massive differentiations with the kit and things like that. So, for someone that's never been on an aviation fire station, what does it look like for them? What are they
go through? If we think about the response time, if you keep that in mind when we're talking about it, so 2.5 minutes in optimum conditions. So therefore, the day has to be really focused on whereabouts you are and how ready you are to respond. So equipment, test and inspection, daily inspection, the same as you would do on local authority, come in, DI your BA set, DI your vehicle, that sort of stuff. Straightforward, standard.
How much BA are held on something like this? Because there's only 3 seats on them Panthers.
Every member of staff, so currently at the airport that I work at, every member of staff has a BA set available for them. So every airport...
Would you be expected to wear one?
I wouldn't be expected to wear one, but there is a BA set on my vehicle.
Because I know at watch commander level in a lot of domestic services, they don't have to maintain their BA.
Yeah, we do.
Do you have to still do reaccreditation?
Different levels of role related. So again, on call, I'm actually a breathing apparatus instructor and maintain my competence through that role, absolutely. And in aviation, the level in which I would need to, I still put BA set on occasionally when I need to, based on our maintenance as competence scheme, and carry out those tasks and functions. So general day-to-day, guys and girls will come in, do their daily inspections. We'll carry out any test and inspection that needs to be carried out as generated part of our main equipment maintenance schedules. And then we start planning our day around training, around any visits that are going on, around any familiarisation. We've got, certainly where I am, we've got a number of aircraft, a number of hangars, a number of maintenance sort of setups. And actually maintaining competence out in the airfield is another element as well. So
I bet it must be heavily training focused.
It is
because
hugely training focused.
When I think about a domestic fire station, obviously they have like water, risk, all of those are the references. Community fire safety, for example. You will probably do aspects of that. Obviously, like you said, your hangars and things like that will be...
There is aspects.
Kind of like risk references.
Yeah, there is aspects.
Inspecting hangars and stuff like that.
I mean, and again, some airports will have fueling facilities which are much higher risk, and maintaining an awareness, competence, attendance, visits, relationships, policies, procedures, all of that is part
knowing
of
where the
maintaining.
isolations are,
Absolutely.
knowing how to deal with it, knowing how all that side of it works. But there must be a massive focus on training, because it really is. It's like the normal fire service on steroids. You've got to be that much faster, that much quicker. It's all a little bit bigger. It all delivers at a higher pressure. So you've got to be pretty slick.
Absolutely. So training is makes up a good part of the day.
I'll bet.
So yeah, absolutely.
So when you respond to some of the medical calls as well, are you expected to cover all of the terminals and everything as well? Do you do out on a domestic flight for that?
Again, airports will have their own sort of response areas, and every airport's slightly different, I guess. But certainly those that are responding to medical incidents will need that to be written into their sort of task resource analysis, if you were to say, right, we will be able to respond to this, and this in these locations. The domestic appliance at some locations is part of the TRA, is part of the task resource analysis, and other locations it's not. So again, those that aren't involved in the task resource analysis will potentially have a lot more freedom as to where they can go and what they can do, because they don't have to be able to respond immediately back. Those airports that are involved in their TRA will need to be able to respond back. So they need to focus on that as well.
Now, you currently sit in different ranks in different services and stuff like that. How soon into your career did you begin to flirt with the idea of going for promotion or going for development?
In the on-call world, very soon. It was one of those that I've always enjoyed pushing myself. I've always enjoyed putting myself outside my comfort zone, if you like, more so now than I did then, I guess. But the idea of being able to attend an incident, not necessarily to stand and point the finger, because one of the big things about the on-call system as well as the aviation is the on-call is where I get to still play. So I still get to drive trucks, I still get to hold the tools and put fires out and whatnot. So that's massive. That's a massive draw to that. But actually being able to go out in charge of an appliance happened fairly rapidly for me in the on-call world. And again, from the family element, I guess, my uncle was retiring. He was the leading firefighter at the time. I applied and I actually got his job as he retired.
No way.
I took over. And that then sort of started that journey, if you like. But,
do you go out as crews of 4, 5? What's the minimum?
Well, when I started, it would have been minimum crew of 3. So
really?
we were able to respond with a crew of 3.
Wow.
And that in itself is quite shocking in seeing your response now.
Yeah.
But at the time, it was quite normal. It was absolutely. Were we effective? We made an attendance, and then the other crews come in and whatnot, so you make up the numbers there, I guess. But now, currently in the service I'm at, it's the minimum response of on our station, a minimum turnout of 4. There are different crewing models on different stations around the brigade, and obviously it depends on which appliance there is.
So what's the watch strength for the on-call station?
Again, every station will vary. Some stations, it's one of those things. If you could come up with a formula for recruitment for an on-call station, bottle it and sell it, because you'll be very rich.
Yeah.
Because every station struggles, some more than others, struggles to recruit for the on-call system. And currently we've got 12 on station.
Really?
We did have 18.
Has it got one tender?
We got one domestic appliance, one Land Rover, and one co-responder. So we got three appliances.
3 vehicles.
Yeah.
That's not a lot of people to try and crew all of those vehicles, is it?
Absolutely.
My on-call station, we've got two appliances, and I think when I last checked, they had about 22 people. And again, it's all dependent on number of hours and things that people can give. What's the lowest number of hours people can give these days?
Your FTE is worked out on your full-time equivalent. It is worked out on your scoring system, I guess. So somebody that's able to give Monday to Friday 9 to 5 for day work, essentially, would be classed as maybe a 0.5 of a contract, but somebody that can give 24 hours a day will be classed as a 1. So you can sort of make your way up to that magic figure of 11 or 12 FTE based on a variety of different calls.
Have you ever changed the level of availability that you give? Because I certainly did.
As a shift worker, well, when I first started, I was a butcher, as I say, and it was nights and weekends only, because I was working out of the village in the butchers.
Couldn't be released from your job.
Couldn't be released from a job. It was too far away. And then when I became a full-time firefighter, working a shift system, I then gave alternate cover. So some days I can give you days, some days nights, some days a block of 24 hours, whatever else. And that's sort of generally you either give nights and weekends, day cover, or alternate. But every station, every brigade's, again, slightly different. So.
How did you balance that with family life? because I was still on call. So I was on call for 10 years, and I did it when my children were very young. And it felt at times a bit like supervised visits, because I couldn't be alone with my children. Not for their safety, just because, if I had to go, I had to go.
So when I joined, I hadn't met my now wife. We got together a year or so later, and it was very much a case of this is me. This is warts and all. This is what I do.
How soon after meeting her did you tell her you were a firefighter?
She knew. There's a story I won't go into about how we met, but she knew.
You were wearing a blue light on your head.
Yeah, that's it. I drive around with
a firefighter badge on my window.
Jacket on all the time. I'm a firefighter. Did I say I'm a firefighter?
I was a kit in the back seat. Yeah, I was not a firefighter. So I got to talk about it.
So actually, she knew my sister-in-law and blah blah blah.
Knew.
So she knew anyway. So that was that. When it comes to the kids, it's very much a case of daddy daycare. So you make yourself available and not available depending on your contracted hours and whatever else. And when it was daddy daycare, it was brilliant. I was booked off. We would go and do whatever, take the kids out. We'd do whatever else. Now we're just getting to that point now where my children they need to know where I am.
But they don't need you as much.
But they don't necessarily need me to be there.
My youngest
all
walks to
of the
school
time.
now, and it's been very surreal that I'm not really needed in the morning. I'm here-ish, or I'm on the other end of the phone if I'm at the gym.
But that's a routine thing, yeah? So like we've got a dog, we walk to school, it's part of our morning routine. We walk to school, walk the dog, walk the little one, and it's just like, right, see you later, and then you go and get on with your day. But when now you're not necessarily needed for that element, it's almost like, I still need to walk the dog. Can I come with you anyway? Do you mind if I tag along?
Not really, Dad. I'm walking with my mates and stuff.
Yeah, exactly that.
I'll be like 10 feet behind.
Yeah. You won't even know I'm there.
Somewhere else.
You won't even know I'm there.
But it's different, isn't it? As we talk about those chapters of life, and we said it before, and it's something I want to come on to now, is that handling those different chapters of life and having the freedom to want to, talk about being called out on your BS as well sometimes. When you say you always want to do something and then you're given the opportunity to do it. I mean, last year you went through a surgery and it became a really strange situation where you had the opportunity to create the beautiful coffee that we're now sitting here drinking. So as you've moved into that different chapter of life, how have you sort of managed to carve time in and become a little bit more selfish as well? Because like before, you're giving all your time to on call, all your time to whole time, and then that last, or that other thread to yourself, aside from the family. Being able to start something like this, which is incredible, it's something we're going to be doing alongside the podcast. I'm really proud of it. Seeing the packaging, tasting it this morning. This one's a little bit fruitier. Sorry to jump off on it. What's this one?
This is the response bag. This is
really nice. Yeah, so this might be my favourite.
Yeah, thank you very much.
But you put this together last year.
Yes.
As your children had then got a bit older and you had the opportunity to do it. But so many people have the opportunity and don't go for it.
So there is an element of scratching an itch. There's something that's been burning in the back of my head for a while. I want to try and do this. I want to try and do that. So how did the time become available? I'd say the children are getting older. They're less needy of my time, I guess. I've always been busy. The houses that we've owned, there's always been a job to do. There's, building work and whatnot. That's all now done. Children now don't need me, and it's a bit like a case of twiddling my thumbs. What I do.
Because you're still very young in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, absolutely.
You may challenge that, but you are.
Well, yeah, okay, thank you.
No, you are, man. Honestly, I always say to people, you ever play that grid game? I think the average male dies at 88 years of age in the UK, average.
Right.
So
okay,
if you did a
few
grid,
years to go.
That's what I'm saying. If you did that grid and shaded it in, you recently had a birthday.
Yeah, I did. Yeah,
you're not even halfway there, or you're like halfway there.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, give my age away there, Pete. Thanks.
That's massive, though. Do you know what I mean? You've got all of that time.
So now I'm looking. I'm saying, right, I've got this time. I've got this itch, and now I'm just about to be laid up from an operation, which absolutely petrifies me. Not the operation. The operation needs to happen. What petrifies me is like I'm going to have nothing. I'm going to be unable to do anything because of this operation. Now's the time to do something I've wanted to do. So, hence Duty Crew. It becomes a reality.
When did it first become an idea? Because you were scratching an itch. When did the itch start?
Duty Crew itself, the name aside, I always wanted to do something, own my own business of some sort. So it wasn't necessarily because I've always worked for someone. So when I left school, my education, didn't have a great time at school. Quite severely dyslexic. It was quite difficult, and 35 years ago, dyslexia wasn't quite as open as it is now. So
back then, you were just slow, or you were.
I was in trouble because I wasn't aware of what
wasn't designed to help people back
Absolutely. So I struggled there, but when I left school, I went straight into work, full-time work. That was when the butchers came along, and you meet people, mentors, whatnot, and then you get into the fire service. So I've always had an employer. So the first thing was like, could I do something for myself? That box has been ticked. Great. I'm now a director of a company, duty crew. Brilliant. That
scary,
box is ticked. Very scary. I don't know. If I say I'm winging it, it sounds wrong, but I'm learning as I go along. So I now own a company. I'm not particularly great on the IT stuff, but I've now built a website. So you challenge yourself.
Looks good.
Thank you. All the time you're sort of sat down, feet up, and saying, right, I now need to learn. YouTube has become my greatest friend on lots of different areas. So I'm now director of a company. I've now built a website, and I've now got 5 coffee products, which I'm really proud of. But part of that process was just, the coffee industry is flooded. Yeah, there's lots of coffee companies out, lots of people doing what I do, but it's about
lots of people doing something similar.
Similar. You're right.
I don't think there's many doing what you do.
So you look and say, I want to make sure that the coffee that I put out is, it is authentic. Is exactly what it is. It's got some background. So is emergency service related? Absolutely. I think I've got the credentials there. 23 years in one and 22 years in the other. I think there's a bit of credential there. But I also very much aware of the environment when it comes to my children, 11 and 13-year-old girls. What does their future look like? How do I help their future? Blah blah blah. There's lots of bit about the environment where we talk about sustainability and all of that. So I wanted to make sure that the companies that I work with are absolutely on the same page. And the roaster that I've partnered with is exactly that. All of that. It's the process which they use. It really intrigued me. I went down and sat with them. We did lots of tasting sessions. They walked me through the whole process of what they do and fell in love with them and their setup. And it's very, very, very environmentally friendly. So they actually...
That aspect of recycling the
absolutely.
That was the fascinating.
So they use. So when you think about, if you have a cafetiere, for example, you put your coffee grounds in the cafetiere, you fill it with water. When it's finished, do you pour it down the sink? Do you put it in the bin? What do you do with it? Well, actually, if you then say, well, that is a waste product, you've used the coffee, you've drank your drink, that's it, it's fine. Well, the roaster now collects that, packs it, forces it, dries it into coffee logs, and they're now fuel logs, and they're now fueling the next batch.
Love that.
So it's just that continuation, but it's not just roasting the next batch of coffee. It's it's producing enough heat for their unit and their neighbouring units on the industrial site that they're positioned. So they are, by default, actually lowering their 100%. Carbon footprint of their environment. And I'm like, I love this. How do I get to be working with you? So although I'm not a coffee roaster, I don't profess to be. And as I said to you earlier on, my education continues. I'm soon to be going on to some barista courses to build my education further when it comes to coffee.
How's that process been of becoming a student again?
Do you know
because
what? I
you've become very established. I really enjoy what you know.
So when you talk about fire engines, fire appliances, fire equipment, fire procedures, fire, I still love dipping back into the butcher role. I still love preparing meat for family dinners and that type of stuff. I still love that, still enjoy it. Another career was landscaping. Well, at our home, we've recently done the garden, the driveway, and I've done for families. I can lay all of that, and I enjoy doing that because it's away from fire. This is just, again, sometimes I think you need a distraction to help you focus on other things. So distracting on, duty crew doesn't take all of my time. I perhaps don't... That may well change, but at the moment it's a case of it's a part-time job alongside my part-time job and my full-time job, and it's those elements there that I really enjoy watching it grow, and it is growing.
100%.
It's nearly just coming up to our first birthday, and where we've come in the last year, leading me to here, for example.
Just the product you've created, mate, the professionalism that comes with it, from all of the detail that's gone into the design to the packaging, to also the story behind it, the level of detail that you know about the product as well. You're not... I don't see you as an opportunist, like somebody who has, tried to sidestep into a sector. And you do see a lot of this in the emergency services, where people have seen they don't work in the emergency services. They've just seen a niche and they try to capitalize on the niche. Yeah. But then when you go 3 or 4 questions deep, you realise they don't even have anything to do with it. They've got
Absolutely.
no story to do with it or anything like that. Doesn't mean the product's inherently going to be bad, but it leaves
It's
a
not-
sour taste in your mouth.
Absolutely, yeah, quite literally. I mean, if you think about the website, you know, I'd sort of say on there about we sit around the mess room table. We still at work. We sit down for a watch lunch at work. I mean, COVID aside, COVID was a very difficult time, but
For everybody,
we sit down predominantly on a day shift. We sit down and have a watch meal together, and you will hear the quips and the banter and the chat across the room, and that's what being on a fire station is about.
100%.
And I love being part of that still as well. I've got a very different role now, of course, but I love that still goes on, and I love that I can still sort of be involved in and around it and comfortable to be around it. Coffee, tea, whatever your drink of choice is. Protein shakes probably more now as well.
No.
But there's lots of stuff there. You go, actually, the products are there. We do this. We drink a lot of coffee. We drink a lot of tea. We sit. We chat. This is ideal.
Why not me?
Why not me?
Why not me?
So scratching my itch for launching a company, to building a website, to developing a product, working with a roaster that I've never met before, but now I've formed a friendship with, to be able to put it out there and actually tell the world this is me, this is what I do. Part of Steve Bartlett is now duty crew, is also aviation, is also domestic, local authority firefighting, but now coffee.
I think it's an incredibly brave thing to do, mate. I think so many people will die with that idea in their mind that it'll be a stillbirth. They'll have never really given it the energy. And equally, like I said with the podcast, you've got to be able to get through them growing pains. You've got to be able to push through that. Who are you? What's this rubbish? What's this crap? You know what I mean? I don't know who you are. I don't know what this is. Doesn't make sense. Blah, blah, blah. All of those people throwing stones from the sand, often because they don't want to do what you're doing, but they want to do the thing that they wanted to do, they're not doing.
Yeah, what I would say,
whatever it may be.
What I would say is certainly colleagues that I work with, a number of the colleagues, both in the aviation world and in the domestic world, the amount of startups that have come out of just the small group of people that I know and work with is actually really inspirational.
Yes.
You've got people that are being brave. You've got people that are doing something different. You've got people that are taking that leap of faith, that outside of your comfort zone, that crikey, what happens if? What happens if you don't do it? I guess
100%.
more people, there's more failure come from not even starting than actually starting, and you learn, don't you? If something fails, you learn, you do it differently next time. But if you don't do it in the first place,
I think of that when I stand at the school gates, do you know what I mean? And I hear the mums and dads, not for, they're no better or worse than they are, but saying, do what you believe in, go for it, you don't have to, and I think the kid should have every right to turn around and go, are you going for it, Dad?
Yeah.
Are you going for it, Mom?
Yeah.
And it's so, and you speak about it really passionately there when your children are now at an age where they will be looking at their futures, they will be looking at taking exams and GCSEs and all this sorts of stuff. And for you to ever say, you know what, your dad was going to do this thing, but he never did it, and you'll go, why? And you'll say, try and justify it in your mind, you'll go, oh, because I was looking after you and your mum and your dad or your kids or your whatever, but you would never say that to them. They would go, oh, Dad, you should have done it. You should have gone for it. You shouldn't have sacrificed that for me.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You should have pushed through and gone for it. And you're doing that. And it says to them, when you're taking them to the Sunday thing on the weekend, or, they go to the first club and they're nervous and they feel silly, be honest with them, open up, and I always say to my daughter, I put this podcast out and God, I wasn't sure about it, or somebody sent this thing in and I was like, God, I felt like an idiot, or I don't feel like it's doing very well. And then all of a sudden it'll explode, and then it will see peaks and troughs, and you'll go, but be open and say, God, and even like promotions and stuff like that. If you don't get it, share your failures with people, because it's honest.
Yeah, I think that's, some people, or most people, I guess, are so concerned about the failure. Now, don't get me wrong, there's many failures.
It's losing
in my
face,
path.
isn't it?
Yeah,
Don't lose face.
There's many failures in the path that I've trodden, and it's losing face. Nobody everybody's going to be laughing behind your back because you didn't get the job, or everyone's going to be laughing behind your back because you started something that they don't like. You go, okay, well, listen.
And honestly, they're not really doing that much anyway.
No,
I always say to people, you'd care less about what other people think if you realised how little they do.
Yeah, I think that's really good.
They don't really think about. No one thinks about Pete Wakefield that much. No one thinks about Steve Bartlett that much. They think about you when they see you, and when they hear something about you, and they go, "Oh yeah," and they'll go, "That's great," or "Yeah, I love that," or they'll go, "No, he's a whatever."
Yeah.
and then they'll move on.
I think there's so many things, like say Duty Crew as a company at the moment is doing exactly what I wanted it to do. I never envisaged it would be an overnight success. It would be like it would hit the markets, and all of a sudden everyone's going to go, oh, you got to buy that. But that's not what I was after in the first place anyway.
But I think it can be though. They always say the overnight successes take on average about 5 years.
Oh, there you go. And it could be, and it could go that way. And this is, the age I'm at the moment. I've still got massive aspirations in my industry, in my career. I still want to progress. I still want to push forward. I still want to have an impact on change. I still want to develop not only myself but those around me, those that on my watch or on the station or in the industry. And that passion won't go. That won't finish. I think there's an element where you go, actually, do you know what? I'm going to keep being as passionate about that whilst giving some time to this. And if Duty Crew gets to the point, because at the moment this is me, and if it gets to a point where actually it's going to be me plus, then great. Let's cross that when it comes to it. But I'm loving the journey.
When you think about that aspect, and when you think about leadership and things like that, it's obviously something you entered into quickly in your careers. I say quickly, you'd already worked in lots of jobs before. You were 24, 25 probably when you first started going into that. What are some of those things that you see done well when you've worked for great people? I mean, you spoke passionately about the first boss you had, which wasn't even in the fire service.
Yeah, absolutely.
What is great leadership to you? How do you try and replicate that? And what are some of the things that we should aspire for?
I think you've got to have your eyes open. Have your eyes open to everybody around you. So as you said there, my first employer was at the butchers, and I would still consider him today to be one of my biggest mentors. He's absolute unbelievable amount of respect for the guy. He taught me so much. I mean, family aside, at that age, that was exactly what I needed. I needed somebody to guide me, if you like. 16 years old, and that was exactly what he did. And I'm entirely grateful. And
how did you do it? Without getting into the weeds of it, as you might say, what was it about the way he spoke? Because it's a very personal thing, isn't it? A great mentor for one will not be for another.
Just the way that he was. The group that we were working with at the time, there were a couple of youngsters. There was a couple of guys that were older than me that had trodden the same path as I had at school, had difficulties, had come out. Not a toe rag. I was never in trouble with the police. I was just a bit of a naughty boy at school. Like to have some fun, like to have a bit of banter and whatever else. But and he just nurtured that, and he said, actually, do you know what? You can do that, but you need to be able to do this, this, and this. Yeah. And the team that we had around us at the time was just an incredible team. And again, still friends with the guys now, still see them. I was at the football with beer with one of the guys at the weekend, and it's just, we talk very fondly of those times, which were a number of years ago now, by the way. And you're sort of saying, well, that shows you how good it was at that time, that 28 years later, you're still saying, do you know what, that was a really good time.
I see a lot of that when I think of the emergency services in itself, maybe especially the fire service. I think you see it when a lot of people, ex-military and stuff, tend to migrate into things like the fire service. There's something about that sort of individual that wouldn't necessarily fit very well in most normal, I say in brackets, jobs, but they find a home in the fire service. What is it about those first sort of approaches or skills, or the way that your first manager do it? What things have you tried to replicate in that, and how do you repeat that with the people that you lead now?
I guess being able to listen, being able to identify and nurture some of those sort of raw talents, if you like, and you're looking and saying, okay, right, what do we do here? How do we do this? I mean, like the on-call system, for example, it's quite literally the butcher, baker, candlestick maker that makes up the on-call system up and down the country. Yeah, there'll be local people, there'll be an accountants, there'll be gardeners, there'll be whatever it is, a real variety of people that make up those jobs, and that's what makes it such a successful sort of team, if you like. Coming into the whole time element, you say about the ex-military. I've never served in the military. I've got lots of colleagues that have served in the military, and they talk about the times that they had as part of those teams, and they missed that bond or they missed that teamwork. And when you come into fire, that is replicated to a degree. So nurturing skills, looking at people, listening, being empathetic, trying to be honest about everything you do, that has to be there. The integrity has to be there. It has to come through. If I'm being honest with you, then all I ask is that you're honest with me. And between us, we might not know the answer today, but we can work on the answer tomorrow and the next day and whatever else. But if we don't start off on an honest playing field, then actually
I found the on-call perspective, you require much greater emotional intelligence sometimes, because a lot of people definitely aren't doing it for the money.
No.
So you need to be able to demonstrate to the individual that you do care about them, that you're interested in their life, you're interested in some of the challenges that they're facing outside of the job. Whereas whole time is very different in the fact that they're obviously paid considerably more. And it's their full-time profession. So it comes with an aspect of expectation, but also I think there's an irony in that sometimes, in my personal experience, you do see a lot more passion sometimes in the on-call sectors.
Take away from fire. When I was in the butchers, I'd leave the butchers at 5 o'clock when the shop shut. I didn't take my knives home and start sort of practicing and doing stuff at home. Yeah, I'd left the butchers. It wasn't until 7 o'clock the next day that I'd be back doing that again. With the on-call system, it doesn't really work that way. Even in whole time, maybe it does. Maybe you go home, maybe you shut the door. When you go out the gate, that's it. You're off duty. But actually, on call, you could be sat having your Sunday roast with your family. You could be watching a movie with the kids. You could be at a moment's notice, the alerter goes off, and you respond to whatever you don't know is going to be there until you get to station. So you're right. You're not doing it for the money. You are absolutely doing it to help, to make a difference, to be involved in the community, to provide a service, that sort of, again, without sounding corny, I guess you're providing that's exactly what you're doing. It's a
They've got to be really, really passionate about it, because you do see sometimes on whole time stations where people find it's like a real inconvenience that they're getting called out in the middle of their day or something like that. But it's a strange thing that you're on call hungry for it, always hungry for it.
Yeah, we this last week, for example, attended a call late in the evening that we went through to the early hours of the morning, and it was a relief crew. So we knew we're there just to babysit a fire basically overnight. Yeah. There's a number of us there, maybe a number of appliances, 3 or 4 or 5 appliances, whatever else, number of crews. And actually, do you know what? We had a bit of a laugh.
It's great.
You could get really down in it and say, "Oh bloody hell! It's 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm here. I'm like not even doing anything." Yeah. But actually, you're taking a mickey out of each other. You're having a laugh. You're having a put the kettle on or whatever it'll be. Have a
I used to go to
bar,
like a stack fire. They were the best.
Yeah.
Stack
just
fires out in the middle of
and
nowhere.
ever.
And we all just you make your own little den of where you're sitting, and then you rotate through the crews.
You're making sure that instant's not
go and
not
drag
escalating.
it out and go and do a little bit of
exactly that
around the edge and just wet everything down around the edge of it, and then go and sit down and keep chatting.
It's very different. The crews that turn up to that incident in the first cruise would have been absolutely running their what's-its off, and they made a massive impact very, very quickly, and that's what you do.
Yeah,
we spoke about being that offensive firefighter, and they got in there, and they got involved, they attacked it, and they did a fantastic job. The job that I was called in to do was not that. The job that I was called in to do was to make sure that the scene was safe overnight, and it wasn't going to re-flare up at all. And we're monitoring throughout the whole time. We're monitoring. And you're there, and you then hand on to the next crew, a few hours later, that are going to do the same to the early hours. And it got to a point where the incident closes down, obviously, and that's fine. But it's those crews that attended it first had the biggest impact, because had they not done the roles that they undertook at the time,
you've got to lean in quick.
You've got absolutely
really,
into
really
it, and they did, and they really did in that call. And then you coming back in talking about the on call bit. Last night, April, or just the annual testing, I guess. With hose testing, so we're there. You have to run out the hose, you have to charge it. You have to, look at it, make sure it's not burst. It's a job that you go, but actually,
nice.
You can have a laugh.
Steady.
You can have a laugh
brew
on,
do you know what
exactly,
I mean? Get a bit of duty crew on the go.
So you sort of you get involved, and that's the bit I love about doing the on call, is that yes, my roles and responsibility in aviation are very, very different. They're the things that I'm involved in, the procedures that I'm
pretty freaking serious at times.
Absolutely. But then you come back out and you go, well, actually, do you know what? Testing hose is pretty serious as well, because if the hose fails on an instant, do you know what? The crews on the end of that hose are in trouble.
And it's also the example you set for those as well in your station. We talk about that leadership aspect and not asking anybody to do anything.
Yeah,
you're not at least willing to do yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Get in and be involved.
Absolutely.
In it. Now, obviously, the culture's changed a lot in a lot of UK fire and rescue services. You've got 2 young daughters.
Yes.
You're from a generational family of firefighters.
Yes.
Would you think fire service is something that you would encourage your children? Not that it'd be bad if you didn't, because it'd be nice for them to have their own dreams and passions. But
one thing I've said to my children, to come back onto the fire question in a second, but one thing I've said to my children is that I live in the village that I was born in, and I haven't left for longer than a course or a holiday. Now, some people might find that incredibly sad, perhaps, that I live in the same village that my kids go to the school that I went to. So I've said to them from an early age, what I want you to do is I want you to go and find the world. I want you to go and find your place in the world. I want you to go and see where you want to be. If that's the village, that's fine. If it's a different country, that's fine.
Why do you want them to do that?
Because I think it's there's so much out there that they could do, and for them it's like, go and find your place. This I felt was my place. At a very early age, I felt this is my place. I felt this is what I wanted to do.
Did you ever consider going anywhere else or doing anything else?
There's a really, really interesting story. So,
you didn't have like a year in Australia or something.
just prior to my full-time contract being signed off, I and my friend had a deposit down on a 6-week open-ended, thinking 6 weeks, but a bit of an open-ended trip. The offer came up for me, and equally at the time he had an offer in a different occupation that came up. We both spoke over a beer and said, do we, don't we, what do we do? We decided on the career rather than the sort of open-ended trip. I'm now in the position I'm in, and he is in a very good position in the industry that he chose as well. And we look back now and say, actually, our careers gave us the lives that we've got. We're still best friends. We've been friends since we were in pushchairs, and it gave us that choice. That moment in time gave us today. Whereas if we had gone and done the trip, we might have had a great experience and might have opened up lots of different doors. It's the unknown, isn't it? But
it will have, and that's we spoke about it earlier when we spoke about mobile phones, and I think that's becoming more of a factor now with this fear of missing out. Do you know what I mean? This fear of, because back then you were able to appreciate and love the things that you're now doing.
Yeah.
But for some people, when they can see what so and so's doing in America, or they can see what so and so's doing in Scotland, especially for our kids, and they're like, it's great to have these dreams and aspirations. But it can also be a bit of a torture.
Yeah.
When you feel like, oh God, I'm stuck here doing
some
nothing.
of my friends have gone and migrated. Some live in Australia. Some have
Love
gone,
that T-shirt, by the way.
Thank you very much. This was my wife when Duty Crew was first born. This is my wife.
She's
said,
a good
congratulations,
egg,
go for it. I did something very similar for her, but we won't go there. Some have, and you look at those and you go, do you know what? What an opportunity they had, and they seized it. Social media is great. You lose contact with some friends, but you still peep into the world that they're leading, and some of them are overseas, starting up their own businesses and being very successful, or families, and you're sort of seeing how they're growing. And I love that, and I absolutely love that. So coming back to, would I encourage the girls to go into the fire service? I want to be part of. I want to be in the position where I could potentially have an impact on what the future of the fire service looks like, so that young ladies and young children, boys, girls, can go into an industry and feel like they're in the best place. I would look and say it's massively changed in the last 20 years that I've been in, hugely changed.
Yep.
Some of that is absolutely needed. Some of that is rightfully changed.
Yep.
But there's elements of...
Got to be careful not to throw a baby out with the bathwater.
There's elements of sitting around a mess room table and having a lunch and having a chat and having a bit of banter, or sitting down for a tea break and catching up, or going out on calls and getting into it with the guys and girls. That has to stay. Has to be part of it.
Otherwise, we'll take the soul out of it.
We spoke about COVID a second ago. COVID had a massive impact on that element on a whole-time station, and it was really
massive impact
really
in pretty much every sector,
really
but
hard.
Especially for us in the length of shifts that we do, and you're around each other so much, especially with on-call stations as well. You see each other at your best and your worst at different times of day, and and all of this sort of stuff, and you see someone after they've just had a row with the fella or something like that, and it's so important to be able to sustain those ties. Yeah. Because that's the strength of the watch. It's the strength of the culture. It's what keeps us going.
You're a team of counsellors for each other, aren't you?
100%.
Yeah, absolutely. You're there to listen, to guide, offer advice, whatever it be. Take the mickey out of whatever it is. You're there to support each other through it. Now, that might be a firefighter that's having a difficult time for whatever reason, and you're just there to pick them up and to sort of either be in ear, tell me about it. Let's go and have a walk around the station. Let's just go and, because where we are, my office window, I look out and I see see airplanes landing and taking off every day.
That's got to be cool.
It is pretty cool.
Surreal.
Very much so. But it's awesome. But what it also means is I can't go too far. So I can't say, right, let's go over to blah, blah, blah and go and grab a coffee. But what I can say is let's go and grab a coffee and we'll just wander. And we just walk around and just chew the fat, one-on-one. Yeah. Let's get it out there. And particularly through COVID, that was really key. So I sort of talk about COVID fatigue in lots of areas. We're tired. We've had, not just in the aviation industry, but in lots of industries, COVID has massively impacted. It's changed. It's changed. It's not gone away. It's not finished. It's not over. We're learning to live with it differently.
But learn that we can live with it. So we just need to adapt.
But we're all tired. Like I say, that COVID fatigue. So people don't come to work and intentionally make mistakes. People don't come to work and intentionally in a bad mood, but they might be in a bad mood because of something that's been impacted because of blah 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 blah. And you follow that chain through, don't you? So rather than just jumping on people and saying, come on, sort yourself out. Why are you feeling like this? And generally, you get into it, and that bit of the elements. So coming back to the question again is, I want to make sure there's elements of what we do now stay and form part of what we do. The job needs to change, of course it does. But it's not change for change's sake. It's evolution. It's how the roles will change, how the positions will change. The on-call system, for example, is constantly being looked at up and down the country. If
we put you in charge of the on-call sector for the UK Fire and Rescue Service, what things do we want to keep? What things do we want to change? How do we make this next decade attractive for my children, for your children, for people of that generation? And how do we keep them interested in wanting to be part of what we both know to be? Because we've seen the inside of it and gone, wow, this is amazing. Hey, come in here and have a look at this. And they're like, oh, it doesn't look that good. And you're like, dude, come and have a look inside. It's really good.
I think knowing the level of impact that you have on the communities that you serve is absolutely fundamental. Knowing that actually, I was going to bring it up earlier on. One of the questions you posed made me think about it. But your children are growing up now, but I don't know whether they ever had a fire engine come and visit the school.
Of course they did.
If they
I brought
did,
it.
There you go. There you go. So they remember Daddy Pete. But if you think about the area that you are, children growing up will remember those things. They remember them for lots of reasons. They remember them because it's a red truck, it's got blue lights on it. They remember them because the individuals that came out and spoke to them engaged with them on a level that actually they spoke to them as people, little people, yes, but people. Realising that you can have such an impact on that person growing up to the point where they may decide that they will also want to join the emergency services. I mean, what a gift is that? Yeah. So you're in this position that's saying it's not just the job. You're in a very privileged, or we are in a very privileged position in the emergency services to impact the future of the emergency services. The boys and girls that are at preschool this morning learning whatever they're learning may well grow into becoming the next chief fire officer of A, B, and C fire service. Yeah, that's awesome because you can impact on that.
Going on.
Yeah, you can have an impact on that, and knowing that you can have an impact on that. I think in the private sector is perhaps a little bit different because of because we don't have that level of engagement. We might be able to go into terminals, we might be able to do stuff off duty, but whilst we're on duty, we don't really have that interaction, and we can't really have that impact. So
I imagine things like metrics, and because effectively it is still a business. And
yeah,
like
but I mean, listen, there's safety elements, safety patrols out in the airfield or out in the buildings around the airports and whatever else. Fire services will be involved in wherever they are. Aviation will be involved in some element of. In the first airport I worked at, we used to go and test the fire alarms in the terminal on a Sunday morning. We used to go and test that. We used to service all of the extinguishers across the airport. So you would be in and around the airport stuff, all the time, and sort of you'd test the hose reels or you would do whatever else. But there's elements that the fire service now across aviation will be wherever they are. They will be involved in some form of. Prevention and protection, because that's what we do. Yeah, that's
with this sort of. I always think of like a global community now. There's so much. Forgetting COVID for a second, there's so much more travel that goes on these days. People are coming in and out of the UK all of the time. Do you see the aviation side of it growing? I mean, involved in those strategic conversations at your level. How many airports? I mean, it might be a difficult question, but how many are there about at the minute? What is it? 10 big airports in the UK?
Well,
I really don't know.
It depends on where you're looking. If you're looking sort of like wherever you are in the country, they'll be big. I mean, I came past signs for airports coming up here today, and you're looking and saying, actually, different levels. Business aviation is different to commercial aviation, is different to cargo aviation, is different to general aviation.
Where's it advertised? Because I know, like, for a lot of local stuff, people can go on NFCC websites. Is there a place people can go to find out about aviation firefighting? Is there recruitment websites?
I would suggest there'll be more around social media now. So for the airport social media stream. So if you live near an airport, one of the first things I'd be saying is like follow their social media, because actually that's where it's going to come out. Things like LinkedIn. So again, if you
rubbish on LinkedIn, I need to do more on LinkedIn.
Tell me about it. When you open it up and you go, it's 30 messages there, or there's so many people have done something, and you tried to contact you, and you think, I don't look at it every day.
I've got to make that more of a habit.
And social media for me, particularly for Duty Crew, you'll find us on Twitter, you'll find us on Instagram, you find us on Facebook, you find a website. So that's out there.
It's linked in every episode as well, so people will see it below.
I appreciate that. I think I've tried to have a LinkedIn page for Duty Crew, and I can't work out how I need to make that work, because I spend my whole day on social media, and I don't want to be doing that either. We spoke about
there's an automation software stuff that I don't know if you utilise.
I've started dabbling, yeah.
Good. I was going to say,
if I can sit down on a Monday morning for an hour and say, right, that's my week.
Bang it all out for the week or for the next 2 weeks or something like that.
And these are things, particularly when the kids are at school, that's when I'm most proactive at home. When the kids are at school, I can sit down with a laptop, I can Duty Crew to my heart's content. When my wife's working, as long as I'm sort of doing the bits I need to be doing for the home, I can then just crack on.
Right, Steve, as we sort of come to a close with our conversation, I always want to ask a couple of really almost sort of personal questions as well, I suppose. And there's one thing I wanted to ask you about the Duty Crew that I know we're excited that we're going to be doing with the podcast.
Yes.
But before we get onto them, we talked about the generational side of what you do, and we spoke about the watch culture. I think for many people, the reason they join the emergency service is because they've fallen in love with a story or a thing, or they heard of this time when there was a particular thing that somebody was really proud of. So I wanted to ask you, what's been the sort of proudest moment for yourself working in all these years?
So I've got a couple of different answers to this. I'm gonna break down the operational call in a second, or calls, but the obvious one for me is to collect my 20-year-long service good conduct medal from our group commander in COVID. So we had to be really respectful of the conditions and make sure we weren't going outside of guidelines. So it was a small affair, but my mum and my dad, my sister, family surrounded me. To stand in a lineup with my brother, my dad, my uncle with the 20-year medal is a photo that is on all of our mantelpieces, and it's one of those things you go, I'm incredibly proud to have done that to serve the community for that length of time. To dedicate that length of time into what we're doing, that's something I will be, I'm immensely proud of, and I know that people around me, family and whatnot, are as well.
It's that aspect of a century of service.
It's incredible, Pete.
It's crazy.
When you and I know it won't be unique, and I'm not saying that we're the only family that's done it. By far, there will be families up and down the country that brothers.
It's bloody incredible, mate. And I think it will happen less and less as we.
I think it will happen. I do agree with that. I think it will happen less and less, but it's something that I am incredibly proud of to be part of. Our local community means so much to me anyway. To be able to serve them in the way that we do, to be able to attend the calls the way we do. I don't always get it right when it comes to lots of things, family or business or whatever else. But one of the things that I will always come back to is saying I will always try my best and try my best to do the job that I do. I'm incredibly proud of. When it comes to operational calls, every call you go to, when you're going to make a difference to someone, as we said earlier on, someone picked up a phone, has dialed those 3 nines and has asked for help, and you being able to go out and help, that's something to be proud of, yeah. There was a call in a couple of years ago now, just pre-COVID, where we're at drill, we're on station, and as I said earlier on, we do a co-responder car as well, where we go out and respond to medical calls. Because it was a drill night, we've gone out with 2 of us. We've gone to a potential cardiac arrest. We've come into the scene. We've seen a wife performing CPR on her husband whilst holding the phone, getting guidance over the telephone, and it's an incredibly. Wow, this is happening in front of us. All of the training that we've had, everything kicks in. It just went straight into defib out, airway in, bag mask valve, shock delivered, as other resources are turning up. 3 months later, that gentleman came into station to say thanks. And it's one of those where his son had dipped in a couple of weeks after the incident to say, Dad's doing okay, he's in hospital, he's still with us. And then when he came down for a cup of tea, and I can feel it now. The old hairs on the back of the neck are going up. But it's one of those that you look and say, do you know what? That is absolutely not me, not us, as in the two of us, but as a collective, we played a part in that.
Yeah. I think that's something so unique again about that on-call perspective that I think a lot of whole-time sections won't get, because they've finished work and they might drive 20, 30, 50 miles the other direction and don't have that aspect of it. It really is a powerful thing that you can do in your community, and you can see the difference in everyone that it affects in that community as well.
We knew the address. We knew where we were going. There was absolutely minimal delay on any element of what we did. Entering the scene, delivering the care that we delivered, assisting the additional resources as they turn up. And they turned up very quickly afterwards, by the way. It's not a case of like we were there holding the fort, blah, blah, blah. As a collective, the team effort, but to receive that gentleman back into station and, shake his hand and whatever else. Yeah, that one cuts it. But let's say every call you go to where you know you're making a difference to somebody else, you go away feeling pretty awesome, don't you? It's that I've played a part in that. And I think that's when you talk to colleagues now and you talk to potential new starters now, those elements, there are some bad days. There are some really bad days in emergency services. I've received counselling from at various times through my career for calls that I've attended at various times, because the pressure cooker, one of my colleagues puts it very, very eloquently, the pressure cooker, if you don't take the top off the pressure cooker, it's going to blow, so you need to take the top off, let some steam out, deal with some bits, put the top back on, and then you can go again. And actually, the way in which my colleague explains that to me, I get 100%. I get, and it's recognising in yourself and in others around you when it's time to take the lid off the pressure cooker. Is probably one of the most important roles of being a leader, being a colleague, being a team member in the emergency services. Self-awareness, absolutely. And the firefighter charity absolutely supported me through that. There continues to support me now. In fact, my daughter's had an operation earlier on in the year, and the firefighter charity are there for us again now, as they were a number of years ago when sadly we had a bereavement in the family. That you look and say, this is a family that I'm really proud to be part of. So what am I most proud about? I'm proud of being part of the fire service family.
Well, you're giving it back as well now. So Duty Crew have got an association with the Firefighters charity. I know you've supported in your personal life, and giving donations and stuff like that. How is that working with the company now?
It's a developing relationship. We are absolutely where we can. We promote on our social media platforms. We attend events. We will be holding some events later on in the year. My cousin, in fact, is doing he's not in the fire service, funny enough. He's a family member that's not in the fire service, Pete. But he's carrying out a walking challenge this year where he's going to walk 2,022 miles in 2022. Jesus. Because my uncle, his dad, who was in the fire service, is receiving some care at the moment as well. So that's my cousin's way of giving back. So I love that. And there, again, unashamedly plug in that there are links to that on our website. That if anybody 100%. Wanted to go and have a look and support what my cousin's doing there is absolutely would be really appreciated. But
charity is a great thing to be part of. We've done a number of episodes with them. We're a media partner with them. We go on and do a lot of support with what they're doing.
Yep.
In essence of paying it forward as well, I did want to, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention about the fact that you're also paying it forward, obviously, with the podcast, an aspect for people to be able to get a deeper dive into the Duty Crew stuff.
Yes.
So for everyone that's unaware, we have got the boxes of 10. Give us a little elevator pitch on what people, because we're going to give away once a month.
Yep.
From Duty Crew. What are people going to be getting?
So the response bags, predominantly response bags, are the Sumatran blend coffee. It's a tea bag essentially, but coffee. They are quick, easy, mess-free, convenient. Take it, chuck it in your kit bag. It's absolutely...
That's the thing I loved about it.
Wherever you are, you've got fresh coffee. Yeah. So that's
you don't get to the station where you're covering and there's got any there.
Exactly.
Well, they've got cheap, nasty coffee.
How many times, the standby.
Something in the back of the cupboard.
So there's something that I've learned over 23 years is don't never rely on a standby kit. There's always going to be a pot of coffee.
The other one will be locked in the locker and you can't get access to it. So have your Duty Crew with you.
100%. It's a big block of freeze-dried coffee that someone's put a little bit of water in at some point and you can't drink it if you tried. So response bags are absolutely, the response bags for listeners are out there. You're going to be doing the giveaway and running that one through. And I'd love to know what people feel about them, what they think about them when the listeners get those
So every time you receive them, guys, so you will see this post. It's going to come out on, I think, the 3rd of every month. You will need to tag a member of the emergency services in the post as well. You need to be following the Duty Crew page and, of course, following our page at the time of the draw. We'll be drawing at the end of the month, and we'll be sending out these boxes. They'll be having 10 packs in them for you to share with your watchers or whatever like that. The link for Duty Crew will be at the bottom of every single episode, and it will be at the bottom of every single YouTube as well. So go on over and take a look. We really appreciate the feedback, both for the podcast, but certainly for Duty Crew. Grab them photos, grab it in the watch room, grab it when you're in the appliances. Let us know what you think. This is always that evolving thing. You know, Steve's one of those that's the eternal student, and this is a developing product, and there's a massive variation inside it as well. I've had the privilege of trying a few of them this morning. It's certainly going to be going in my watch bag for when I head back to station. So have a jump in, make sure you're in it to win it. It's another just value add from the podcast and from Steve as well. I wanted to finish by closing, and it's one of my favourite questions, because you've experienced things from aviation, from different services, from recruits, to how your dad did it, to how different members of the service have done it. Looking at the services now, what do you think are some of those key characteristics that are required to be a great firefighter today?
It's a really difficult question to answer, Pete. And as I said before, I've listened to some of your podcasts, and some people really nailed the response, put me right on the spot. I think for me, it's being able to listen to your crew, being able to pick up on what's going on, showing empathy, absolutely, because everybody's having a difficult time at the moment. Yeah, whether they be on crews that are on duty, or whether or not it's members of the public you're going out to help. So being able to show empathy, being able to listen, being able to be honest with yourself and with those around you. Honesty it goes both ways, absolutely, 100% it does. Being able to show empathy to the people that you're out there dealing with. Everyone's having a bad time. To be able to show empathy and support in that way, compassion is clear. But the integrity for me is right up there as well. If you're showing integrity, doing the right thing even when nobody's watching is massive. Because
that's how it's happening most of the time.
You can cut corners. Yes, we can all cut corners. Yes, we can all see things and do things easily. Find an easy way, because that's what we are. Yeah, we're resourceful. Firefighters are resourceful. We can, adapt and overcome.
I say efficiency is smart laziness.
We're going to adapt and overcome, but it's doing the right thing even when no one's watching. So you can get out there. That integrity is key. So for me, they're the bits there: integrity, honesty, compassion.
Love it, Steve. Thank you very much for your time today, brother.
Thank you very much.
I really appreciate it. Take care of yourself.
Lovely. Thank you.
The Firefighters Podcast is a global podcast seeking to develop, inspire, and motivate the world of the emergency services operators. Through a series of wide-ranging conversations celebrating those within our sector, we seek to encourage and support this incredible group of people. It's brought to you by myself, operational firefighter Pete Wakefield, and I speak with individuals from all walks of life who I sincerely believe can add value to or develop those who have chosen this life path. Please support your emergency services wherever you are in the world, and thank you for listening.